Okay, good enough. Good morning, everybody. Yeah, my name is Daniel. I'm the executive director of SOCAN, and I'm really glad we're recording tonight's session because it's a slightly smaller crowd. Everybody must be enjoying the good weather. I bet Foodery over in Phoenix is hopping right now. Maybe we should hold a lecture there, and then everyone will be there, and we don't have to worry about attendance anymore. So we appreciate you making the trip down. Today we're going to talk about SOCAN's updates for the Oregon Long Session. Everyone is focused on the federal, as they should be, but there is still an Oregon session happening right now, and there's still a lot of bills that we have to pay attention to, bills that we support and bills that we oppose. SOCAN has tracked over the course of time. I think we're currently at 80 bills, but that number has been fluctuating rapidly. We started at 25 bills and slowly have been adding over the course of the session. We're now about halfway through the long session, and we wanted to give you all a little bit of an update on what we're doing in Salem. Well, we're doing it here, but working in Salem. So, clicker is, no? That, oh, it's a big button. That is what we call a stock image that I found on the internet. So I could not tell you where it is. We can pretend it's in Salem, though. It's actually a new old building that was built in Salem. There we go. Is it still the big button? Perfect. So the agenda tonight, we have various speakers representing our federal and state committee. Myself and Alan, as well as Alan Hallmark and Gary Clarida, will be helping us to kind of talk through a series and set of bills that we've been following and watching. Some of them we support and some of them oppose, as I mentioned. And we'll kind of talk about the state of where they're at, which bills have died, which bills could possibly zombie, which bills were we really excited about, and they're not going anywhere this session. So we'll kind of give an update on that. And then we'll talk about some partner events and just partner events. Perfect. First, we're going to do a land acknowledgement. So as an organization based in the Rogue Valley, we gather here on the occupied lands of the Lagawa, Shasta, and Tequilma people. In the 1850s, tribes were displaced due to the gold rush and colonization of southern Oregon. This brought war, starvation, genocide, and the erasure of local tribes. In 1853, the Rogue River Treaty was signed, where 3 tribes were forced to cede their land of the upper Rogue Valley and relocate to temporary reservations, the closest one being located at Table Rock. We recognize that we are on stolen land and will work to protect our community, the climate, and environment for future generations. Oregon is home to 9 federally recognized tribes. However, there are many more that do not hold this status. We hope that with this land acknowledgement, you will research the land you reside on, work with us to honor the original caretakers, and to protect our environment and community in the work we are doing. And if you haven't heard me point out this website before, it is a fascinating overlaid map, so you can see where the tribal boundaries are historically over time. And now we move on to... Nope. We do not move on yet. There we go. Was that too much? Oh, I can't go backward. Cool, new technology. So how we usually start these monthly meetings, if you've never been with us before, we like to start with a question. So the question today is, have you submitted a public comment before? Why or why not? Please take a minute to turn to your neighbor or somebody you are sitting next to and have a brief conversation. Foster a little bit of community here. Alrighty, if you haven't already, make sure the person next to you gets to talk.
supermajority. You think the Democrats should really be, taking advantage of
Alrighty, let's start bringing us back together. It's always so hard to break up good conversations. I have to be the bearer of bad news, and everyone's fun. But we have a program to get to. So before I turn the mic over to Alan, I just want to talk a little bit more about our progress. We have submitted 185. I didn't check this morning. 165 public written comments and 10-ish oral testimonies, 10, 12. 14 now. Look who should have looked at the numbers this morning. That's me. But the reason I had the question be about public comments is I've been exploring the public comment realm for the first time as a new executive director in the kind of advocacy space. I've written my own public comments to contribute to the event, and I've learned a lot about how to write them and why to write them, and I realized in talking to people across the valley that not a lot of people have ever written public comments before. They maybe don't see the point, or they don't know how to get started, or the worst is they feel like they can't. And if you feel like you can't write a public comment, go to any one of these bills and read the public comments, and you will see very quickly that you are more than qualified to be writing public comments. I wrote this 5-page dissertation for one of the elements. I think it was one of my first public comment, including citations. I was trying to model Alan. It was an amazing, well-argued paper. I had some quips in there. I was so passionate about it. And then I started reading other people's comments that were just like, this is dumb. I don't like this. I have a severe misunderstanding of what's going on, and I just wrote something in a box. So you are more than qualified with just a little bit of research to contribute to public comments. So we have a new trifold in the back about public comments, some ideas, some resources to help you get started. So if you're interested, grab one of these in the back. And now I will turn it over to Mr. Alan Journet to kick off tonight's program.
how far can I get away from this? Do I have to?
You got like a foot either way.
Okay. Okay, I use the. This is about as far as I can go. I use the screen as my cheat sheet, so I like to stand a bit further back than right at the front. Okay, I don't assume that everybody knows exactly how the legislature works, so I just wanted to shoot you a few quick comments so that when we start talking about bills, what we're saying makes a bit of sense. Oregon alternates between a long session of 6 months and a short session of 8 weeks. So we're in the long session year. 3,000 bills have been filed so far, over 3,000. This is a record. There's actually an effort to try and limit the number of bills. Many of the bills are pre-filed. That means they're filed before the session opens. Once session opens, additional bills are introduced, and that's how we get up to 3,000. There weren't that many before the session. The general sequence is that bills are filed as HB number, or SB number, meaning there are either a House bill going into the House chamber or a Senate bill going into the Senate chamber. The first reading in the chamber is where they're introduced. That's pro forma, and nothing happens. They just sort of, somebody says, hey, here's Bill HB ... and that's the first reading. Then the bill is assigned by the Speaker in the House. Yes. Yes, Carrie. They're all being reviewed, but some level. But as I'll talk, some of them are just expired through lack of time. So the Speaker in the House assigns the bills, or the President in the Senate assigns the bills to a House or a Senate committee. So they first start off in a committee in the chamber where they were introduced. The committee may hold an information session, which is invited speakers, so somebody will invite the people who support the bill, and that is not anywhere that we can get involved. Then the committee holds a public hearing, and that's where the comments that Daniel is talking about are able. We can submit written comments. As soon as a bill is scheduled by a committee for a public hearing, we can submit written comments, and we can do that for 48 hours after the public hearing begins. Don't ask me why. And then, sometime later, the committee will hold what's called a work session, which is when amendments are discussed and voted on, and the bill vote occurs. A bill must pass out of its first policy committee by April the 9th, and that's, I think, one of the things that kind of limits the 3,000. They run out of time. So if a bill doesn't pass out of its first committee by April 9th, it is dead. This rule doesn't apply to bills that are in the joint committees or the chamber committees on rules, judiciary, or financial. Why that is, I don't know. Okay, next. If a bill is recommended do pass, it either goes to joint ways and means, and it does that if it has some kind of a fiscal component, meaning it's taking money out of the general fund. If it's not doing that, it then goes to the chamber floor for a floor vote. The bill then goes to the other chamber and its committees, and then to that chamber for a floor vote, assuming it's being successful. Bills from Ways and Means, however, can go straight to both chamber floors. This will all be on the exam. If a bill passes both chambers, it goes to the governor for her signature or veto, which can take a bit of time. If you are interested in following a bill and submitting testimony, there's this wonderful resource called the Oregon Legislative Information System, which we abbreviate as OLIS, and you can go there and follow the bill. So if you're interested in following a bill and you want to find out about OLIS, go to https socan.eco what's an OLIS-2025, and you'll find some guidelines on how to use OLIS. It's a fascinating and instructive resource. Okay, now I'm going to pass to Daniel, who is going to talk you through some of the environment bills.
Thank you, Alan. And now I'm going to try and do a juggling because I didn't print my notes out. But as Alan mentioned, the process by which bills are made is more complicated than the Schoolhouse Rock we all might remember from earlier days of learning how bills work. But ultimately, it's just kind of getting on an email list, waiting for the public comment session, and then doing a bit of research so you can add your voice to the cacophony of voices either opposed to or supporting various bills. So we've pulled out a list, and we're going to kind of, by section, a few of us are going to talk about some of the bills that maybe are not the most important, but we isolated them for their importance. So the first one is Senate Bill 682, which is the Climate Superfund Cost Recovery Program. Say that 5 times fast. But the Superfund slush program has only been passed in 2 states, Vermont and New York, as of right now. And what it does is it establishes a fund by which we can help fund wildfires, risk reduction, adaptation programs, mitigation. So this one was never super likely to pass this session, but I have on good authority that this is going to be a bill that's going to pop up sessions from now and continue to pop up until it eventually gets passed. Oregon is probably just waiting for a few more states to take the risk before they eat a lawsuit. Senate Bill 680 prohibits a person from publishing or causing to be published an environmental marketing claim, extra words. Effectively what this bill was doing was saying, hey, let's not use, let's not allow for people to spend money on false advertising or anti-green advertising. Sorry, I need to pull my notes out now. Yes, it was the greenwashing bill. Makes it unlawful to publish material false or deceptively make environmental marketing claims, including terms like net zero, carbon neutral, without substantiation. So there was a big trend of organizations that were using certain language. I'm sure everyone's seen like the organic label on certain foods that you're like, well, I don't think it actually is, but there was nothing stopping you from just putting on labels So this was an effort to fight back against those kind of measures. Senate Joint Resolution 28 was OSERA's baby. So it was the Oregon constitutional right to a healthy environment. Like following in Montana's footsteps and Hawaii and a few other countries, it isn't inscribed in the Oregon Constitution that we have a right to a healthy environment. So we were trying to make it a right within the Oregon State Constitution so that citizens could sue organizations that were not allowing for or worsening environmental causes. It also allowed, it stems from the public trust doctrine, which is an ancient idea and concept that the government has a responsibility to protect the lands in which we reside for future generations. Senate Bill 551 prohibits restaurants and retailers from providing reusable plastic checkout bags. So this is kind of a continuation from, I can't remember how long ago, 5-7 years, grocery stores weren't allowed to give you plastic bags anymore. They had to switch to paper. Restaurants were exempt at the time, so this is kind of a correction and an adoption. A lot of restaurants locally, and particularly in Ashland, use compostable material for the carrying case of the food, but then they immediately put it in a plastic bag, which does slightly defeat the purpose. So this one is important for us. House Bill 3450 directs the State Department of Energy to develop an energy storage transition plan for the Critical Energy Infrastructure Hub. If you have never heard of the Critical Energy Infrastructure Hub, it is a hub in Portland where the vast majority of fossil fuels that we use in the state are housed, and it's built on rocky foundations. It's about one major disaster away from tossing all of that oil directly into the Columbia River. So if we don't shore up this infrastructure, we are just at risk of a cataclysm. Then, yes. There we go. Oh. That was almost well timed while I was struggling with the clicker. So House Bill 2949 requires the Department of Environmental Quality to contract with a third party to assess the study of financial assurance requirements for owners and operators of bulk oils and fuel liquid terminals. You'll notice a trend in all of these is that they have really obnoxious language, but when summarized, it effectively means that what we're trying to do is get assurances that when something happens to an oil storage facility and it leaks or some other environmental catastrophe, we needed some mechanism by which the operators of those are held responsible and or liable for the leaks and issues that arise from that storage. And then House Bill 2152. Extreme weather and supply disruptions are no longer hypothetical. They're new normals. House Bill prepares us for strategically planning liquid fuels reserves across Oregon. So again, all of our major oil supply is in Portland, and if something happened, it would be very hard to get the energy fuel that we need across the state. This would establish reserves of that fuel because while fossil fuel is not great, we do rely on it to keep us warm and safe and powered. So until we've made the full renewable energy transition, it is just smart for us to have these strategic reserves located across the state. And then House Bill 3477 was a change to the greenhouse gas emission reduction goals. The state passed this several years back, and the goals have changed, of course. So this was mostly a procedural update to get the goals in line with the current science. Unfortunately, this bill did not make it anywhere. Surprising because it was primarily just a rule change, but as it happens with various bills. So now I am ready to turn it over for the transmission grid to Alan. Alan.
Thank you. So, the transmission grid is how most of us, 99% probably, get our electricity. Can you hear me now? Okay. And here in the Pacific Northwest, we're lucky in that we have abundant hydroelectric sources of energy from the big dams, mostly on the Columbia and Snake Rivers. the Bonneville Dam was the first big one, and it was completed in 34, and they added a power plant in 1937. And that provided tons of cheap power for the Pacific Northwest. But now, after 90 years later, our energy usage has gone way up, and the power from those dams is not enough to provide all the energy we're going to need in the future. So our power grid is in danger of not being able to deliver all of the energy it needs to deliver. A group of people got together, a group called MCAT and some others, to I think MCAT is Mobilizing Climate Alternatives Together or something like that. And they scoped out and came up with several bills that they wanted the legislature to look at that would shore up our transmission grid so that we would continue to have abundant sources of energy. But they didn't want to have to build lots of new power lines across the country. So they said, we'll look at different methods of helping our transmission lines work better. And one idea was to use grid-enhancing technologies, new technologies that would somehow make the grid more efficient and work better and provide the same amount of electricity or more without building a whole lot of new structures. But the couple of bills that were introduced to do that have not gone, they have failed and died. But there are other bills that do other things that would help our transmission grid. One is House Bill 3336, which I didn't know I was supposed to talk about. Somehow I got dropped that one out, and I don't have my notes on that. Dang it. So maybe Alan can help me out later. But there's another group of bills that has to do with microgrids and legislation that would enable communities and people and organizations to create small grids on their own. Like there was testimony from Wallowa County by a county commissioner and others up there. They said, our grid up here has been attacked by thunderstorms and all kinds of terrible things. If you've ever been to the Wallowas, you know they have some hellacious weather up there in the summertime. Anyway, they want to form a community grid for Joseph and other areas up there that will take care of that problem, so that they would have electrical storage and batteries and so forth that would take over when the major grid goes down. And there's also a bill that would allow the deployment of all these microgrids, and would work out where the money goes, where the power goes. And if they don't have an emergency, then the power would go back into the major grid. And if they do have an emergency, then it stays in the community, in the microgrid, to help folks deal with that. And then, so that's what HB 2065 and 2066 do. And you can read what the specifics are. The 3609 requires each electric company to develop a distributed power plant program for the procurement of grid services. Now, that's sort of jargonese, but what they mean by this is that these energy sources would be like energy storage devices, meaning batteries, load control devices, including but not limited to smart thermostats, water heaters, and other load control devices approved by the Public Utility Commission, and electric vehicles. In other words, if you're generating power through solar panels on your house, or you have electric vehicles, you can feed energy back into the system, into the grid, and get credit for it, and take from the grid when you need it. So these are bills that are just trying to work out these alternative ways of getting more energy into the grid and getting the energy for communities when they need it so that they can function better. Thank you. You next.
Okay, thanks very much indeed, Alan. Where's the remote? In your hand. Oh, up there in my hand. Okay. Okay, my task is to talk about nuclear power. And I'm going to do this rather quickly. As you may recall, you may not, in 1980, Oregon passed a statute, a ballot measure, that precludes the construction of a nuclear power plant in Oregon unless or until the feds discover a way to take care of the waste satisfactorily. And even then, the ballot measure said, even if the feds can do that, then we demand that there be a public referendum on any proposed nuclear power plant. There were 13 bills introduced this session that variously tried to circumvent that principle. All but 3 of them are dead. There are 3 that are still with us. One of them creates an income tax credit for energy production in Oregon. Now, that would be fine if it were confined to renewable energy. But what this bill does is provide a tax credit for gas and nuclear power if it came online. So we're opposing that one. A couple of other bills are somewhat insidious. 2038-03, the -03 refers to an amendment that's been incorporated into the bill. This requires the Department of State, the State Department of Energy, to study nuclear energy, as though nuclear energy hasn't been studied enough already. This one, in our judgment, is a complete waste of money, but it's gone to Ways and Means. We hope to die. Amazingly, this one passed 11-1, the committee 11-1. When you see a 7-5 vote, that means it's a party line vote. This one passed with a lot of Democrats voting in favor of it. I do not understand. I'm sorry? Courtney Nerone. No, okay. Let's not go there, Alan. I understand where you're going. Okay. HB 2410 is probably even more insidious, and that passed. This allows the Energy Facilities Siting Council, which is responsible for allowing these things to be sited, it allows them to approve a demonstrator small modular nuclear reactor power plant in Umatilla County. And that's because Amazon wants these. Data centers are incredibly expensive in terms of energy, and they are a tremendous pressure on the grid, and so they're contributing to the problems that Alan was talking about a moment ago. That passed 8-4. These 2 have both gone to Ways and Means. We're hoping they die. If they don't, if they come out of Ways and Means and go to the floor, then we'll be asking folks to vote against them. But if they have a hearing in Ways and Means, we're going to be asking folks to submit testimony against them to the Ways and Means Committee. Okay, so that's what I'm going to say about nuclear power. I also have a charge to talk very quickly about coastal bills. There are three coastal bills dealing with coastal issues which we are supporting. They're all in Ways and Means. If you're interested in any of these, when you get to the table, write down your name and the bill number, and we'll keep you posted if there comes a chance when you can actually say something. I am now going to pass on to Gary, who is going to talk about forests and wildfire and then wildlife. And I'm going to help Gary out a little by putting the microphone in the stand.
Help me because 30 years working in the woods has made my hands a little shaky, and trying to hold on to a microphone is a real adventure, which you don't want to watch me do. So anyway, and then also he's going to run the button so that this thing goes along, because I'll probably forget what I'm doing and I'll pay attention to it at an appropriate time. So go ahead. So the first, there we go. Yeah, I can do this. I can do it this way. So the first bill that's circled up there, 404 in red, which means we don't think it's a good idea. And what it comes down to was somebody introduced a bill that essentially would say if a county wants to manage its lands, the state would let them do it without much of, and so I don't think it would take much imagination for you to figure out what might be wrong with that plan. And it didn't go anywhere, I don't think. And no hearings scheduled, dead. So that's, as far as it goes, that's a good thing. So I would say that in general, something like this that's introduced as, see what I mean? Anyway, something that's introduced like that is sort of like a seed. They don't really think it's going to go anywhere, but they just keep throwing it out there, and hopefully maybe somewhere down the road things will change. And this is an example of that kind of effort. Anyway, so then where do we go next? So the three bills that are circled now are bills that we support, and basically these are all doing a variation on the same thing. There are efforts to increase resilience in communities, specifically to fire, and they approach different aspects of the problem. Some of it relevant to funding, some of it involved in basically creating money to help citizens make their fire resilience and hardening their homes. So that they all are approaching different aspects of that issue. And I think, let's see, so when's 3103? Yeah, so 3103, I was talking about this earlier with a fellow back there. And this bill, if you read it kind of quickly, you sort of go, well, so what's wrong with establishing sustainable forest harvest? And the issue comes that what is sustainable? And there's no language in this bill that says what that might be. But I'm going to read you a sentence that I pulled out of the language of this bill that might give you a bit of an indication of the intent of the people that drafted this legislation. And it says, okay, so allows certain persons to seek injunction from the state if the state fails to establish a sustainable harvest level or manage the available land. So you sort of go, well, what's that mean? Well, that means that's lawyer talk for a party that has standing to be able to sue, to tell the state that if they're not doing what they want them to, they can successfully force them to do it. And so again, I don't think you have to be very clever to figure out who those people would be and what they would be looking for. The other thing about sustainable is that because there's no language in this bill that says what sustainable is, essentially this is an attempt to codify industrial forestry. And I don't think we need to go very far with that one to know. Again, it's the same example as the other bill I referenced. I don't think they really thought this was going to go anywhere, but they're tossing it out there. So, and I think off to wildlife. So there are two. Yeah. So the first bill, okay. So this one didn't go anywhere either. I mean, for the same reason that nobody thought this was a great idea, but they decided that they would. This has been an ongoing issue in this state. For a long time, it was okay to hunt cats with dogs, and then there was pressure from all them crazy people that live in Portland to change that, and they did. But people that think it's necessary and important have been pushing back ever since, and this is another example. They're doing it again and again because of the kind of legislature we have. It's not going anywhere, but I don't think it's going away because the folks that think this is a good idea, they think they have a good reason to do it. I don't know. This one doesn't talk about bears, so I really don't know where that is. Yeah, same controversy. Yeah. Right. So then the next aspect of this is what we call the beaver bills. And there are two of them, and both of them are built around the idea of facilitating the reintroduction of beavers into the wildlands of this state, which everybody that comes to a SOCAN meeting better be a beaver believer, because you've probably heard the presentations about why that's a good idea. One of the bills is designed to facilitate landowners allowing beavers to be close to their property or on their property and not eat things that they don't want them to. And then the other one is basically telling people that you can't shoot beavers or trap them if they're in essentially what amounts to riparian zones. And there's a lot of language about what exactly that means. So I believe that's what I've got. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Gary.
You bet.
Okay. Maybe I did. Okay. So we have a bunch of bills in the miscellaneous category, and I'm not going to go through all of them. But the one in red is one that which we wanted to die, and it did. This was prohibiting the state treasurer. Sorry, that died, and we didn't want it to die. I beg your pardon. There are two bills that have been were introduced that would do pretty much the same thing. One, the HB 2200 is alive. Senate Bill 681 is dead. What these were doing was demanding that the Treasury not invest Oregon taxpayer money in private equity funds, which in turn invest Oregon taxpayer money in fossil fuel outfits. For some reason, Senate Bill 681 didn't make it out of its first committee, but HB 2200 did. That is still before the chambers. So we're going to be encouraging folks to support HB 2200 if you're thinking of doing some testimony. Senate Bill 685 is kind of an interesting one. The gas companies in my judgment, are amongst the most evil utilities on the face of the planet for everything they do, almost. And one of the things that the Northwest Natural Gas did was they started pumping hydrogen into people's homes in their gas supply without telling them. When this bill was introduced, it was actually designed to require that the utilities get permission from the Public Utilities Commission to do that, which was a good idea. But the gas companies pushed back so hard that this was watered down to the point now that all the gas companies have to do is inform customers that they're pumping hydrogen into their houses. And the gas companies are even pushing back against that. So that deserves support. The Education Bill, 3365, and Kathy would be delighted to talk to you about that one if you're interested. That requires that climate change instruction be incorporated in the public schools from K to 12 and across the curriculum. That's passed the House and is Can I go backwards? Yes. That's passed the House and is in before the Senate Education Committee. A hearing hasn't been held, but as soon as a hearing is held, you'll be eligible to submit testimony in support of that puppy. A couple more bills. Here's a building resilience bill. This was absolutely appalling, the red one here. It died, but this one prevented jurisdictions around the state from incorporating into their codes requirements that are a bit more stringent than the state code. There are actually REACH codes out there which were developed by the state, which are a bit more rigorous than the basic building codes, but they're not required. However, jurisdictions can incorporate them into their requirements. This bill actually prevents. What's the point in having a REACH code if you then have a bill that says you can't use it? So we oppose that one. Okay, up here, resilience hubs. I don't know whether you've heard about resilience hubs. These are buildings that they're sometimes converted buildings. They can be new buildings, but usually it's a conversion of a building. This is, the idea of this is that many communities really suffer badly when there are major disasters coming forth, like fires and earthquakes. And what resilience hubs do is provide shelter for folks who are suffering from disasters, but they also provide information for folks on what to do in the event of a disaster. So we are supporting that, and this one, as you can see, allocates some more money to the whole idea of resilience hubs. I am not going to talk about the water bills. There's a lot of issue there, but I'm not going to get into that. Senate Bill 509 we oppose because, and that one is dead, thank you. This one prevented the the Department of Environmental Quality, this should be, from adopting motor vehicle emission standards which would implement California standards requiring that some or all medium or heavy-duty vehicles sold in the state be zero-emission vehicles. So this was operating against the idea of cleaning up our fleet of heavy-duty vehicles. We opposed that. Unfortunately, it died. This is the year of the transportation package. This is a study bill. You can see this is a study bill. What happens with study bills very often is they're kind of placeholders for something else that's going to come along. In the case of this bill, what will happen to this study bill is it will be replaced by a package of transportation bills, of transportation ideas. The problem that we have in Oregon is that the tax that drives our transportation, our Department of Transportation and its repairs of highways and so forth, that is funded by fuel tax. The fuel tax hasn't been elevated for decades, so inflation is eating away at that. But in addition, as you probably all appreciate, even the internal combustion engine is getting more efficient, so people are using less gas. And then we're encouraging folks to switch to electrical vehicles, so they're using less gas. So there's less and less money in the pot for the Department of Transportation to maintain its highways. So we're waiting on the package to see what it is and then to see whether we support it, recommend amendments or what. If you're interested in that one, then please go to the miscellaneous table. I think you're a miscellaneous 2-3 table, and indicate that that bill is one you're interested in. This bill we are opposing because it actually prohibits the Department of Environmental Quality from implementing advanced clean trucks regulations. That one is an appalling bill. We're hoping it goes nowhere. It's in the Joint Committee on Transportation, so it doesn't have the deadline of April the 9th. Okay, and that's it on the bills. And now Kathy's going to explain to you what to do. Oh, Daniel's going to do it? Okay, that's fine.
All right. Before we get to the what we do activity, time to run through our normal rigmarole with the end of our presentations. So to advertise the May general meeting, we have a working title, but we should have a representative from the Oregon Environmental Council coming down to Medford to have a conversation with us. They're doing a big electrification push. They got some grant funding from some private entities to come down here, and they targeted Medford specifically. So we'll have a representative, and we'll be talking a lot about electrification next month in May. And then obligatory, follow us on social media, like, subscribe, share, helps us grow. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. We're on Instagram and Blue Sky and not Twitter because not Twitter. And then a rundown of some of our programs. So you heard from some of the federal and state team today. There was 2 other members that couldn't be here to join us for a couple of our sections, but we meet the second Monday of the month to talk about, especially right now, the legislative long session and bills we support and oppose. They also help us track those 80 bills that we're currently watching through the long session. And then the regional and local project is a kind of a recap project for all of the climate action teams that we have in the area. You can see on one of our new posters an outline of each of the climate action teams that we have running. So to talk about the climate action teams, Ashland's climate action team is currently working on 2 projects. They're working on a printed newsletter to get us away from the social media that I quickly ran through because I don't think anyone is in love with social media right now. We're going back to print. So we're going to have a printed hard copy newsletter filled with science and stories that we'll be able to distribute. And then the Ashland team is also working on the Clean Energy Action Plan for the city of Ashland. We'll be holding some workshop sessions over the next few months. And then Talent is working. Talent was a big part of our Earth Day celebration at ScienceWorks. We had an electrification display, which was the second brand new poster that we got to talk about electrification. Talent is really passionate about that space, so they're going to be working a lot more in that space. As always, you can find our events on our SOCAN calendar, socan.eco/calendar. Sustaining Climate Activists is our climate activist support group, originally founded by one of our board members and is now run by Ken Devaney and Maud Powell. This is a space to come and recognize that the climate crisis is not a sprint, it is a marathon, and everyone needs a space to take a breath and be with like-minded people. Particularly now, it's really nice to be in a room where you know everyone is a climate supporter. And then for the next 2 months, we've also got an intern from SOU, a psychology student that's going to be helping us learn how to take the program that we've built and make toolkits so we can share this a little more broadly than just once a month. To talk about some partner organizations, we love highlighting our partners. Sparking Action is a fire resilience and fire preparedness workshop held at ScienceWorks on May 10th. It's being sponsored by SOFRIC and the City of Ashland and ScienceWorks. From 10 a.m. to 4 p.m., I'm fairly certain it's just drop in and show up to learn more about fire resiliency tools, strategies for home protection, and all things fire as we enter fire season. A hydrology hike in the Illinois Valley. The Southern Oregon Land Conservancy is gearing up their spring hiking series, so if you just want to get outdoors and take a hike and learn something, they have these guided tours where they'll bring in specialists to teach you about the areas that you're going to. Their first one next month is on Saturday, May 3rd, 11 to 1. And then First Friday, there's 2 events that I like to highlight. KS Wild has an art show at their headquarters in Ashland. First Friday from 5 to 7 on A Street. There's usually art and some sort of performative activity. I think this year is a band, or this month is a band. And then also on First Friday, our partners at the Ashland Climate Collaborative host a First Friday bike ride with their Streets for Everybody program and trying to encourage people that, hey, let's use the transportation so that we can then lobby for more bike lanes, for more reliable transportation that does not consume fossil fuels. And then lastly, we want to point out one of our supporters at the Rogue Valley Voice. They have a fantastic events calendar. There's a lot of event calendars that run around the valley. This is one that we like to recommend if you are so inclined. And now I will turn it over to Kathy to tell us a little bit about some of the tables that we have scattered around the room.
Okay, so what we're trying to do each meeting is have something where you are actively engaged, not just sitting there listening. So hopefully you've written down some of the legislation that you might be interested in. I'd like to say when you do testimony, if you do written testimony, you write it in the peaceful, quiet home, and then you copy and paste it into their form. So it's not something where you can do the oral testimony, but the written testimony is strongly needed. Was that something for me, Gary? Okay, if you prefer, you can just write it in. But you can use all your resources and get your thoughts together. So what we're trying to do tonight is help you gain more information on things you might be interested in. So we've created 5 tables around the room, and the idea is that you'll go to a table and the bills are listed with it, their categories. Well, let me just say what they are. Environment is the first one, and then nuclear is the second. The third in the back is forest wildfire, and then the fourth one is in the back here, and that's Divest Oregon, hydrogen, and education. So that's a miscellaneous one. And the last one is resilience hubs, transportation, and clean trucks. So what we hope you'll do is go to one of those tables to start with, and there's information, detail on each bill, where it is, and how you, whether it's ready for comments or not. Now, Alan said earlier, but it's taken me multiple times to understand this, if a bill is in Ways and Means, that means there's money attached to it. It will then be assigned to a Ways and Means subcommittee, and not until it's assigned to that subcommittee can you offer comment. So what we've done is we've put a yellow sheet on each of the tables, and if there's a bill you're interested in but it's in Ways and Means, you put your name and your contact email and then the number of the bill, and Alan will be tracking them, and the committee, the group will also be tracking them. And as soon as it moves to a place where a comment can be submitted, they'll send you an email. Okay, so some of them will say, sign up on the yellow sheet, and you'll be notified. Also, if it's been assigned to a committee, but no hearing has been scheduled, you can't send comments quite yet. So do the same with that. Put it on the list, and as soon as it's in a place where they can accept comments, we'll let you know. Then there's some that are ready for comments right now, and the information is on the sheets. So on the tables, just checking. On the tables are information about the bill, and then there's also the yellow sheet, if it's something you need to get information later. Alan, would you write up there, socan.eco/mm? Each of these bills we've put on a web page, and there's a link to the actual bill. And so if you go online to socan.eco/mm, then you'll see that list. They're grouped by the categories we have here, and you can get more information about the bill. You can actually track where it is if you want to, but we'll tell you when it moves. Yes?
If a bill has a designation on it already of recommend to pass, is there no further action necessary? We just don't need to worry about it because we're going to get signed into law or law. There's no other action.
So if it's coming from a committee, recommended do pass, then it goes, if that's a House committee, then it goes to the House floor. So the action there is to send emails to our reps that are in the House. And so that's listed on those sheets, and you can see who your rep is and their email address. Or you can call, yes.
But the bill may then go to the
So we can submit testimony when a hearing is scheduled, or we can, sorry, I shouldn't have jumped into that one, should I?
No, it's okay. Yes. When a bill is scheduled for a public hearing, you can submit testimony and then for 48 hours after the opening of that hearing. But you can always, at any time, submit testimony individually to the members of the committee that is hearing the bill. The disadvantage to that is it doesn't become public testimony. It's just going directly to the members. Public testimony is valuable because other people see it. And Daniel has mentioned, you can go to the bill page and you can read all the testimony that's been submitted on a bill, and you will realize how inane much of it is. So nobody should ever feel uncomfortable about what they have to say about a bill.
So we'll have a person at each of the tables. So what we'd like you to do, and we have 20 minutes left, is to go and read more about a bill you think you're interested in and identify where you might submit testimony, or if you want to and it's not time, put your name on the yellow sheet. Terry?
So if I go home and I'm talking to my neighbor and I say, hey, I got some great information, you can get involved, I would say go to that website and snoop around and you can do whatever you need.
Yes, and it has a link on it to OLS, to OLS, which is the state way you get information. Oregon Legislative Information Session and system. So then you can get more information about the bills. Okay? All right. So everybody on the committee recommends OLS as a fun time.
I won't be long. I'm very quick. If you're interested in reading SOCAN's testimony on these bills, just go to socan.eco and look for that little magnifying glass and put the bill number in, and you will be able to read the testimony that I or Daniel or whoever has submitted on behalf of SOCAN. And that would potentially give you some pointers if you're interested in writing testimony.
But when you see the testimony that Alan or Daniel have written, you don't get overpowered. You read through it and you say, oh, I like that point. You take that point and include it in your testimony. You don't have to have 10 references and 15 pages of testimony. Just pick what resonates for you. And you can feel free to use any of that as an idea, a starter to go further, or just to use. All right. So let's move around, and hopefully if you can find some legislation you're interested in.